The views, comments, and opinions of the following program do not necessarily reflect those of Morris Media Studios, MorrisMediaLive.com, or its affiliates. Listener discretion is advised. The views, comments, and opinions of the following program do not necessarily reflect those of Morris Media Studios, MorrisMediaLive.com, or its affiliates. Listener discretion is advised.
Good day. We greet you right here from the Morris Media Studios in Leimert Park, South Los Angeles. So glad that you could join us today. This is Faith Without Borders. I'm your host, Pastor Kelvin Sauls, and it is indeed a great joy for me to be here with you. And we're looking forward to a fascinating and awesome conversation today. As you know, here at Faith Without Borders, we seek to engage in thought-provoking dialogue so that we can, come up with some solutions to the challenges or the issues we're going to be looking at. And today is no exception. As always, we have some extraordinary guests with us. And today it is a joy for us to highlight Sanctuary of Hope and the work that they are doing with Transition Age Youth right here in South Los Angeles. And so today, so glad to have the founder and executive director, Janet, here with us. And she has with her one of our young men who's part of the program, Emran, as well as my son who is on the staff. And so we're going to be, talking about Sanctuary of Hope. We're going to be talking about youth homelessness, those drivers and challenges and solutions. And then later on, we're going to be talking about an exciting project that we are working on, with them. And so great to have them here. And just want to welcome all of you. So thanks for being here.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you. We're going to start off by just talking a little bit, Janet, about, Sanctuary of Hope. I know I have been associated with Sanctuary of Hope for many, many years now. And it's one of the organizations that I am, proud of. I support them and do whatever I can to make sure that they continue to become one of those strategic community-based organizations here in South Los Angeles, tackling the challenge of homelessness in general, but in particular youth homelessness. And they do so much more than that. And so we're going to start off with Janet just telling us a little bit about, what's the mission of Sanctuary of Hope and its purpose.
All right. Well, thank you so very much, Pastor Sauls. If anyone ever needed a village anchor and a village cheerleader, we know that it would be you. And so we are forever grateful to have you in our village corner. So what Sanctuary of Hope is, our basic mission is to provide a caring and multicultural approach to services that will help young adults to become self-sufficient and lead prosperous lives. And what we do is that we provide housing, basic needs services, as well as education supports, anything that a young person pretty much needs in order to be on a path to stability as well as resiliency. So we primarily target I say youth and young adult population because we start with the ages of 16 on up to the age of 25. And our populations include youth who have been in foster care, probation, and the new term at promise, right? Or at promise youth.
That's right.
and those who are kind of very low income that need to engage in some youth development activities to help them realize their promise and potential.
Yeah, that's great. And I'm glad you brought up at promise. I'll say something about that in a minute. But you may not know this, Janet, but you introduced me to the term TAY, or transition age youth.
Yes.
Because of the first meeting I went to, when I started, my ministry here, in South LA. And I want you to, maybe say a little bit about, what do we mean by transition age youth, just so that we can make sure folk can understand what we're talking about.
So when we talk about transitional age youth, we're really talking about those youth really for us, although it's 16 to 25, in other groups it's from 12 to 25. And it's that period of the fastest adolescent development from youth to adulthood, where that transition becomes so much into adulthood, where youth are thinking about all the things that will impact their life and what they consider to be their futuristic outlook on life, which is housing, education, meeting their basic needs, employment, all of those things. And so the word transition in itself means transition.
Right. Yeah, and I like that word because, especially in the case of Sanctuary of Hope, the word transition is not just, about surviving, but it's really, transitioning from surviving to thriving.
Absolutely.
Transitioning, from, basically, how to overcome whatever challenges, our young people, might be facing, around that. Go ahead, Imran. Myself.
There's a few factors that are involved when it comes like transitional age youth, because it's more about adult bodies developing adult minds. So when it comes to, what I want to be when I grow up versus what is required of me to sustain myself as I grow. So certain responsibilities, certain lenses, but one of the bigger problems when it comes to transitional age youth who find themselves in a crisis is that sometimes, though there's a variety of factors, sometimes the parents are spending so much time during like those adolescent and high school years trying to provide that they don't necessarily have enough time to deal with what's going on inside. And oftentimes, no matter what the parents have going, no matter what success is involved, if the interior isn't checked, no matter where you go, the problem's going to remain.
Yeah. So it is really inside, outside
Absolutely.
job, that we are doing.
Knowledge of self.
Yes, and also, because if you know who you are, you can begin to understand what you're about, because that sense of identity informs your ability, which then guides your activity. And you begin to realize the destiny, that is out there for you. That's what what I'm so excited about in terms of the work that Sanctuary of Hope, does. You mentioned the piece, around, the development, around us, and the work with transition age youth really is to interrupt, disrupt, if not destroy, the foster care to gang pipeline, right? The foster care, to, sex trafficking, pipeline, because there are so many other pipelines, waiting there, to see how they can, thwart our youth from their identity, ability, destiny, as well as, seek to just suck them up, and destroy them around that. So Sanctuary of Hope certainly provides, a very important, play a very important role in standing in the gap, around that. I want to quickly touch on this term, at promise.
Yes.
Because, I know that, we've provided support to, our assembly member who wrote a bill around that. That is Assemblyman Reggie Jones Sawyer.
Yes.
Just really challenging this term, at risk, and say that's really a negative label that we place on our young people.
Oh, absolutely.
Because of who they are, they are really, all of them, they are promises. They're not necessarily just at risk. You want to say a little bit about that, Janet?
Yes, and I could just tell you, when I heard that Assemblyman Reginald Jones Sawyer was introducing it and just building the groundswell of support for it, it is a label that needed some changing, and it's been a label that we've had for quite some time because we couldn't find a way to say, what can we do to help young people realize their fullest potential? And that's what promise means. It means what is ahead of you that we could help you realize. And the change of the term, what I believe, it's really going to set the ball for everyone. It's going to set the ball for all of us who are in the social service realm of looking in the way that we view and look at youth with the idea of promise. I think young people like Amron is going to have the same kind of, okay, everyone sees me as the promise, as the realization, and taking away that term, the risk. Because risk means, are you high risk, low risk, medium risk? And it's a barometer of threat, right? It's a barometer of danger. And now we're not saying that anymore. We're saying our barometer now is hope.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I was going to say, it's like a degree of wrong, that you already have the youth placed in. Like risk, it's just like certain negative connotations that like come with certain words that are used to label our youth as well as our community. But I wanted to tag in Imran. Like, what do you feel like some of the things certain adults get wrong when it comes to like understanding youth?
I honestly feel like they kind of misconstrue like our like what we perceive as success. Well, for me, it's kind of like, being a young black man, homeless, I get a lot of looks, and I just feel like, once you just from looking at me, you don't really, they already have an idea in their head. Oh, he's not really doing anything. Basically, what I'm saying is, I feel like even like adults in our community and even outside our community, they kind of see what they kind of judge us off what they see in the media, and that's not the case.
Yeah,
it's just that we're kind of forced in these situations, especially in the black community. A lot of us are kind of thrust into adulthood without any like proper preparation, and honest, and it's sad to say, like most of us do end up homeless on the street, and there's not really that many options because there's not. I don't want to say people don't care. It's just that with that idea already in their head, like that negative perception, is kind of like, what's the point?
Yeah, and so, given the prevailing strategy of anti-blackness, since 1690 in the United States of America, that's when, the first,
that's when the game really
individual,
changed.
the first individuals arrived here to be enslaved, our ancestors, from the continent. This whole prevailing sense of anti-blackness, we want to just declare that our young people are not at risk, they are at promise. We just want to declare that our young people are not problems, they are possibilities.
Right.
Yes.
Around it. I think that's very, very important, for us to declare that, and that declaration then gives us a sense of intentionality as to, how we look at ourselves and how others look at us, and really, how, we are then able, to behave in terms of that. So well said, in terms of that. I want to get to, you mentioned some of the programs that Sanctuary of Hope, are doing. Do you want to maybe share a little bit about some of the impact? Maybe I want to look at you and Amron a little bit, because Amron has been a part of it. He's received services. How has, the work, Amron, that Sanctuary of Hope, has done, how has that impacted your life?
Honestly, it impacted me in a great way. Just because, my son's a really cool dude. He's someone I can definitely talk to. Like recently, I had a conversation about to him with him about, some pretty personal things and, just things that I feel like I can't really go to people about, even like my own family. Mm-hmm. And so, not to downplay my family, it's just, I feel like for me, I'm a pretty layered and complex person, and just for him taking that time out to really like listen to me and try to get where I'm coming from, not even like just giving me like bus tokens and things like that, just having that ear, to go to, that's cool.
Yeah. Let's talk about this relationship between the two of you. My son, how would you describe this relationship that you have with Imran? And clearly, there's a deep sense of trust and respect. Yeah. There's a sense of affirmation. Do you want to say a little bit about?
I'll try and keep it at a little bit, because there's always layers to every type of like situation and scenario. Like I work as a life coach, but in order for me to be able to understand youth and just other individuals that I work with, sometimes you got to have a rough life, or like some rough experiences, like life. And the true knowledge of a person oftentimes isn't always understood based on how a person wins, but how a person loses. You really get the honest look of the world, the honest look of your family, the honest look of like your peers, based on how you respond to situations that don't necessarily like go your way. So I've had a series of troubling years, and it didn't always like make sense to me at the time, but this opportunity, this job working as a life coach, it allows me to still like get my activism on, but it also allows me to apply my humility. Mm-hmm. So you have to, as a life coach, it's almost like you're planting a seed, but you're giving it enough space to grow. So my own failures and struggles, I'm able and comfortable enough within myself to let the youth know, hey man, I messed up too. Like there's certain lessons that I was embarrassed talking about. I know what it's like to want to get worked up and knowing when to breathe and just allowing that moment to pass. One thing we've spoken about is how emotion is energy in motion. Mm-hmm. And sometimes, especially as men, as human beings in general, but as men, we can, certain moments, feel compromised by a lack of either respect or resources. And if you're not in your right mind at the time, you might find yourself in a situation that you may not be able to immediately bounce back from. So being a life coach and working with Family Reconnect and helping facilitate family bonds, it takes patience, but more importantly, it just takes listening. So as much as I have to say now, I get the most results when, I speak in teaspoons and allow it to be digested and understood so that it can be regurgitated to the next.
Mm-hmm. So it sounds like the disposition that you have, as a life coach with our young people is, listen, you don't have to become the challenge that you are experiencing. Yeah. You can still maintain, your dignity in who you are, and then deal with this challenge that just happened to, come your way and be able to deal with it. But not just that, you don't have to deal with it by yourself.
Yes.
There's a trusted person that will listen with compassion, that will listen, and create a no judgment zone. And kind of meet you where you are, and then walk with you, from there in terms of what you're dealing with. Is that a?
It's but that was something that I had to do, and allow myself to be more comfortable with letting people in. During my journey, I used to judge black men walking down the streets, frustrated with a beer in their hand, until I was mad enough at certain points in my life to become him. But how else would I be able to guide him through the storm or guide her through the storm if I haven't been there myself? Mm-hmm. So, it's levels to it. And I'd say that to individuals who are going through tough scenarios right now. You almost have to shift a paradigm and look at new pain as something like a sore muscle. Mm-hmm. Something that you haven't necessarily worked out before. So you got to work it out and you got to let it be sore and then you got to develop and take your time. Mm-hmm. It's cool not to move immediately.
Yeah. So every pain that you experience is a path to you maybe discovering a new aspect about who you are and about your character. Right. That's that muscle that you're talking about that has to be worked out and discovered.
Yeah.
Imran, you want to say a little bit more about how this brother has impacted your life and the work that the two of you are doing on your walk together?
Yeah, actually, I wanted to just kind of like explain how I met my son, and piggybacking off what he said. Just to go off with what he said about being able to open up more. I met him when I was just I was at school, in the financial aid building, and just randomly he just started talking to me just cool, normal. I'm a really reserved guy, so of course I was kind of closed off, and the more he just gave himself, his authentic self, I allowed myself to open up as well. And so, just with that being said, I feel like most of us, especially us in the Black community, men and women, boys and girls, I feel like we always have this this shield up, and this just the way he came at me so calm and peacefully and real, that made me want to put that shield down. And I feel like there needs to be more of that, within our community, to be honest with you, because for me, I feel like I have to kind of do everything on my own, and I can't have moments of vulnerability, and so I feel like with that being said, you should it's always okay and it's necessary to be vulnerable. Of course, watch, make sure you're doing it with the right people, but go, if you feel like, if you see someone's giving, their authentic self, they're not, they just want to really get into you, then, just let it go,
It just takes peace. I didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh, no, sorry.
It takes peace, but sometimes you will not necessarily need preliminary failures, but you have to be comfortable being uncomfortable.
Right.
And that's the only way that you're able to lay out the land and allow folks to be uncomfortable as well. They say men shouldn't be emotional, but the truth is that manhood is composure. So it is our obligation to be upright and to be firm, like this table that this equipment can sit on. You can cry, but we only have so many tears.
Right. Yeah. So clearly, with a life coach like my son, vulnerability, can be a bridge to victory, right? Because you have a partner, a life coach that you can walk with, that you can work with. You can ask the hard questions. You can, you don't have to be embarrassed. There's no stupid question, because my son has your best interest at heart. That's just great. I'm gonna have to. You have to send me the application for this program so I can see.
Well, it is. It's part of our family Connect LA program. But I think what Imran and Mike's really hit the nail on is how important people relationships are, especially for youth that are in a vulnerable state who want to open themselves up to having a safe space to talk, to just vent, but also to have someone who's there who could provide life lessons and guidance and all those things. And believe me, when all of us are on the path to solving homelessness, we know housing is important. Yeah. But we know people are just as important, because we cannot survive without each other. Literally.
Yeah, absolutely. And housing is a great stabilizer.
Yes, housing is a great stabilizer.
I have no doubt about that. Speaking of, homelessness, we know that, there is a pipeline, from foster care, if there's not a proper standing in the gap. That pipeline can result, of course, into homelessness. And Sanctuary of Hope, continues to do a tremendous amount of work, not just in terms of providing services, But what always excites me is just the advocacy work that continues to go on, around policy, around how to, have a preventative, a disposition around, this work. And we know that November is Homeless Youth, Awareness Month.
Yes.
And Sanctuary of Hope is going to be, a part of that, in terms of, raising awareness, but also
Absolutely.
to see, how we can, highlight, what's the state, of youth homelessness, what are the drivers, around that. And I know there are 2 programs coming up, and
Yes.
we're going to, highlight those on the screen. But do you want to say a little bit about, the purpose of, Homeless Youth Awareness Month?
Yeah,
And,
so every November, we commemorate, and it's commemorated across the nation, Homeless Youth Awareness Month. And it's really designed to shine a light on youth homelessness here within the United States. Now we know that in the United States, over 500,000 youth are homeless on any given night on the street. And here within Los Angeles County, it's estimated to be over 4,000 homeless youth on the street any given night. And that's based on, of course, a very strict, narrow HUD definition. But I don't think it matters if it's 4,500 or any number like that. We just don't want.
One is too many.
One is too many. We don't want any young person on the street any night. And so what we do is during Homeless Youth Awareness Month, we talk about the drivers of youth homelessness, but we also talk about youth resiliency. Mm-hmm. And it's really important, I think, for people to know that how resilient our youth are in times of adversity and how they find ways to persevere despite being homeless. Mm-hmm. Being able to, hold down a job while living in a car, and finding ways to keep up hygiene so that even when they're going to work, they're presenting their best self. Or even for that young person who's in college, whatever means that they're taking to not only persist in school, but to be on a path to graduate, that resiliency there while being homeless, it's there. So we want to kind of focus in on all those things, but this particular Homeless Youth Awareness Month is around our community, our village. What do our young people need from our village to sustain the resiliency that they have right now? And that's our focus.
Yeah, and community can be a huge resource.
Yes.
I know that, we've been in on this, month, for several years now. This year, for the first time, there'll be an event in the South Bay as well because Sanctuary of Hope is expanding.
Yes.
Hallelujah.
Yes.
So
we've expanded to the South Bay. Yes.
So that's great. All right. We pray the prayer of Jabez, expand our territory. All right. Can you tell us a little bit? There are two events coming up.
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about the emphasis of the one that's going to take place not too far from here, at Holman United Methodist Church.
Yes.
And then also the one in the South Bay.
So the first event that we're going to have is going to be on November 7th, 6:30 p.m. at Holman United Methodist Church. And it's basically our Homeless Youth Awareness Kickoff. This is where we invite our community together for networking, for dining, and for an all-youth panel this time.
All right.
To discuss homelessness and its specificity to the South LA region. So we are going to be acknowledging some of our wonderful partners who've been with us in the process of helping to house many of our young people, but not only just house our young people, but to provide a lot of the permanent connections and support so that, our young people could have a sense of wholeness. Mm-hmm. And then our next event that we're going to have, which is going to be on the South Bay, is going to be on Friday, November the 15th from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. at the Hawthorne Memorial Center. And that is basically going to be our inaugural breakfast in the South Bay, which will be pretty much of an introduction, a lot to speak to the work that's being done around the youth coordinated entry system, our partnership with youth coordinated entry. But what's really going to set off the breakfast is that we have a keynote speaker. Her name is Cheryl Rissonis, and she actually wrote a book called Hindsight, which is basically a memoir of her path from youth homelessness to becoming a physician here in Los Angeles. So it's going to be one amazing breakfast. Now, the kickoff is going to set it off. But the breakfast, it's going to be lit.
You said the breakfast is going to take it to a whole nother level.
Yes, it's going to take it to a whole nother level. Because I think, no matter where, we know that different geographic regions experience homelessness differently. Yes. So, here in South LA, the look and face of homeless, especially for youth, is predominantly Black. Right? But as we go to the South Bay, the face of homelessness becomes more Black and brown. Mm-hmm. And so, but what we do find is that no matter where you go, Black and brown are overly represented disproportionately for Black folks, but more so between Black and brown, we make up a large part of the homeless population, almost near 70% of that.
Yeah.
So
and that's critical, for us to realize that that the face of homelessness in the city and county of Los Angeles is Black, and then also brown.
Yes.
In terms of that. Speaking of that, do you want to maybe lift up a little bit about the drivers of youth homelessness, just to kind of again raise some awareness around that.
So if there's honestly, the battle starts, and one of the things I've noticed when it comes to like working with a variety of families is that the issues start in like at adolescence and high school, and sometimes you've had a number of parents who spend so much time, like I said earlier, spend so much time trying to provide for the children that they're not dealing with what they have going on. Mm-hmm. I learned that working at just a variety of schools, and that's something that happens way before the child even has thoughts of ideas of homelessness. Mm-hmm. It starts with parents starting to become more hands-off. You think just because he's riding his skateboard to school or she's catching the bus with her homegirls that everything's all good because their grades are good. And that's not the case. Like, you have to look more within. When I was working at an elementary school, I noticed how a lot more of the parents were more like hands-on. So when it comes to some of the drivers, that's one of the things I've noticed, is that youth having certain types of insecurities that weren't met, no matter what their grades were, no matter what their parents had going on financially. Like, you'll look up one day and then you won't recognize this 19-year-old who's in their house. But what naturally happens to the youth is that they're ready to go. They're ready to go and make moves. And I didn't understand how important structure still was when it came to youth and environments. Like, I respect the Job Corps and college and trade schools or military so much more now, because if you don't necessarily have a plan, the insecurities are going to be there regardless. So if there's not a plan, because you can be a jerk and still be able to pay your bills and take care of family and responsibilities. But like, that is one of those drivers that I've noticed, like insecurity, and then the insecurities that will cause youth to want to leave from home.
Right. And I think what Bison is hitting on, it's part of our Family Reconnect LA program is, we see that as one of the major drivers, which is a huge driver for young people, is family conflict. And how that family conflict starts to resonate and feed itself, whether it's from the youth being neglected emotionally, socially, or conditions, or what I call toxic stress conditions that may affect a young person and affect their actual physical health because they're going through those stressors as it relates to the conflict that's happening within their family. And those are certain things that we need to pay attention to. I think there was this statistics, and we actually put it on a board, that families are spending less than 27 minutes of family time together. Less than 27 minutes of family time together. And because of that, if you can imagine, well, what's happening with all the other additional minutes when families are not engaging. But I think also, too, that we do also need to point out some of the other drivers, because family conflict it's very high. And it's a reason why we do need Family Connect programs where we could help families resolve their conflicts and help youth to resolve conflicts with their families so that everyone can return to the same household whole. But also, we know that foster care is one of the major drivers into youth homelessness. I mean, youth exiting out of foster care not even prepared, have a 25% chance of experiencing homelessness, and depending where you are, I mean, those numbers go up for different populations. And the same thing can be said with probation, especially as they're going through transition, because we know that the juvenile justice system largely impacts homelessness, and how probation ties into that, and how we have to work really hard to really do a lot of diversion, so that we could build up the promise of our youth as well. And then, of course, our housing market. I mean, our housing market has skyrocketed to ridiculous proportions. And even with young people who are working, and we'll talk about their employment as it relates to persistence, but it's become so unaffordable even for those who are making a living wage. So we have to look at that. And then the last thing would be on the employment end, where, you know, our young people are first hired, first fired. So they get within this whole revolving door of being persistently unemployed, where back in the day when I was working, my first entry job was, hello, how you doing? Welcome to McDonald's. I mean, those jobs are just not there anymore for our youth. So once we're being able to get them into living wage employment, I think it's very critical and key, because employment in itself and the fact that I think the last statistics is that youth represent 45% of the unemployment rate. So if they're unemployed at those high rates, I mean, we need to at some point start figuring out what we need to do to create the level of consistency of employment that youth need in order to not face.
Yeah, I mean, clearly, you know, as we said, the rent is too damn high.
It's too damn high.
In the city and the county of Los Angeles. But aside from that, there's just, this, it's not just the cost of rent, right?
Right.
But also this coordinated effort of the relocation of people.
Oh, absolutely.
Called gentrification that we have to pay, attention to, around how it's happening, who it's happening to. I saw a post this morning when somebody asked, why does gentrification not affect the Chinatowns around the country? Mm-hmm. I thought that was a powerful question. Mm-hmm. So there are just certain communities that are being targeted, you see, around coordinated efforts for relocation.
Oh, absolutely.
If not removal,
absolutely.
in terms of that. So just a key piece around just that other driver.
Yep, absolutely.
That we're talking about.
That's maintaining a cultural imprint. There's a lot of people who aren't Korean, but they live in Koreatown. And the difference is still maintaining those businesses to, promote that community. So, like, you do have that variety of factors, but that kind of comes back to community pride and, like, understanding certain rules and being still politically involved. Mm-hmm. Like, there's just a lot of layers and a lot of games that, I wouldn't necessarily say games, but you have to be strategic. I think one of the biggest words that's really taken for granted when it comes to black community is respect. Mm-hmm. Because a whole lot of us have been able to enhance their lives by disrespecting each other and not having respect. Because there's a difference between disrespect and not respect. Mm-hmm. And just because someone doesn't blatantly disrespect you doesn't mean that they do. Mm-hmm. So when it comes back to community pride, hanging on things that you belong to, that belong to you and belong to your community, that's how you maintain the imprint no matter who lives there.
Right. Yeah, and also, we cannot discount the fact that there are systems and schemes in place
absolutely
to destabilize, divide, and destroy,
absolutely
communities of color in general, but in particular the black community.
Absolutely.
And so this is systemic, it's institutional, and that's why we have to be strategic in terms of how we analyze it, and then how we organize people power, to respond now in terms of preservation of dignity, as well as the protection of the integrity, of our community. So this is just critical in terms of that. So, do you want to say something else?
No, we didn't ask Imran what he thought were any of the drivers.
Imran, do you want to contribute to what are some of the other drivers around?
Well, I'm not really too keen on the drivers, but I do feel like a solution, part of a solution could be that, a lot of us, especially young folks, just young people in general, we don't really know that much about how to manage our money. And I feel like that's not really taught, in schools or in these foster agencies or, things like that. I feel like if there were to be some sort of like a way where young people could actually like have a money management class while they're in like a transitional shelter or foster agency, I feel like it'll greatly benefit their results for success in life, because like you said, like gentrification, and I'm thinking of that as, people outside of our community investing in us, but we're not doing that for ourselves. And I feel like that it starts with us. So, going down to the to that black owned grocery store, getting your groceries from there, whether against going to Walmart or Rouse or anything. I feel like it may cost a bit more, but it's like, take one for the team. You can't get anywhere without sacrifices, especially if it's going to benefit you in the long run. I feel like most of us think about the short term, and that's another thing my son told me. Like,
short-term solutions to long-term problems
just doesn't work.
All right, I like that. That you can't find no short-term solutions to long-term problems.
That's
all right, write that down.
Yes.
But you're so right around the money management piece, because in so many ways it's not how much you have, is how you manage what you have.
Right.
That makes a huge difference, around that.
I'll make it quick. I'm working on that. But a mindset of having less, that's something that we as black people have to really work on. You're used to not having a whole lot, so that when a whole lot comes along, you're getting rid of it just so that you can go back to what you're naturally used to, which isn't having much. Like I had that, that's a habit that I still like work on. And that's really where I get that phrase from. Because it's easy to be loud. It's easy to march. It's easy to get on a microphone and debate with somebody. But more black people have to focus on just simply being the difference in the shadows. Be in the midst. It's just about having patience for that business, getting involved with other like activities, and being a tie that binds and not just another opinion. It's a lot of us, it's easy for us to disagree with one another because God naturally made us out to be creators and natural humans within our own right. But sometimes when we focus on like thriving on differences, like that's where like those problems occur. So like respect, no more short-term solutions, but at the same time, don't get mad at something you can't grab and choke. Focus on the things that you can immediately affect.
Yeah, and also, talk is cheap. The key piece is how we organize people and how we organize power. That's what's going to lead us, to that. We celebrate, Sanctuary of Hope. We're looking forward to the two events, coming up. Celebrating, Homeless Youth Awareness Month. The one where young people will receive voice and visibility. That's great. And then, of course, the inaugural one, where we will be listening to how a person's test became her testimony, and through that, to then try and see how she can be a motivation and encouragement to others, probably going through, a similar situation. So, so we celebrate that, and we're going to transition, to another exciting piece coming up. So we're going to take a quick break, and then when we get back, Faith Without Borders will continue right after this, talking about an exciting program, that's going to take us, from South Los Angeles to Southern Africa. We'll be right back.
Woo-hoo.
Welcome back once again to Faith Without Borders. I'm your host, Pastor Kelvin Sauls. Once again, a joy to have you. We've been having a great time. We have my peeps in the house here from Sanctuary of Hope, and just appreciate them and celebrate them. And so it's been just great to have the founder and executive director, Janet, here with us, as well as one of the young people that's part of the program, Emron, and also Myson, who is part of the staff there and works, in addition to several of the other young people he works with, works directly as a life coach with Emron. And so it's good to have both of them here to kind of, hear what they're doing, what they're up to in terms of the work that they're doing. I've learned a lot, so it's been great. We wanted to transition and just talk a little bit about an exciting aspect of Sanctuary of Hope's program that's coming up. We celebrate the fact that they've expanded their horizons or expanded their territory to the South Bay, going beyond, just, South Los Angeles. And now they're getting ready to expand their horizon, their territory, to Southern Africa.
Yep.
And, as the flyer said, we're going to Africa.
We're going to Africa, y'all. We're going to Africa. Yeah.
So we're excited about that. And as one that, was born and raised in South Africa and, live and work here in, Los Angeles, specifically South Los Angeles, Janet has heard me say this so many times, and you may have heard me say this, on so many of, my shows. I live at the intersection of South Los Angeles and South Africa. And one of the joys that I have, as part of that work, is to invite people into that intersection by facilitating experiences and opportunities, for these individuals to, to come to South Africa or different other places in, Southern Africa. I've been doing this now for over 20 years, and I look at it as an integral part of my purpose here, as well as an integral part of the ministry that I've been called to do. And so I am just excited to now say, we're going to be taking, a Sanctuary of Hope to Southern Africa, some of our young people to Southern Africa the last week in December of this year and the first week of January of 2020. And let me share with you just the vision and the purpose of this, because it's an integral part of what Sanctuary of Hope is all about in terms of how they seek to engage in the investment and the development, of our young people. So this experience to South Africa for our young people is to explore local and global intersections between South Los Angeles and Southern Africa to elevate leadership development in organizing and mobilizing for racial equity. And so it's going to be a transnational cultural experience and immersion, for our young people to see how we can make the connections between just the global systems and schemes that continue, to challenge, the dignity, the humanity, as well as the integrity of black people. And so we're excited about it. And so I'm going to turn to these three individuals who are here. They're going to be on the trip.
Yes,
so it's on and popping around. But I'm going to start with Janet. Just, why, this experience, because we've talked about it for a while now, and now it's actually going to happen. And just, your expectations, for the trip, that we're about to embark on.
Yes. So, when I talked about earlier, just the work that we do with young people, one component of the work that we do is around leadership and character development. And again, our young people are they're in a period where they're developing at a faster pace, but also, we want to develop leaders, and we want them to know what leadership looks like in the context of a global world, and a global world that they are a part of as well. And I could tell you that, sitting down and talking to some of the young people and those who had to write their wonderful essays about why, they were interested in the trip, and then me having the opportunity to meet some of them and have one-on-one conversations is, how will this trip help you realize your promise and potential and the goals that you've set for yourself? How will this trip help you to, one, finish up college? Will this trip help you to perform better in employment? And I think them seeing and have an understanding of life here in South LA and what life is in South Africa, and seeing the things that they may share in common as well as the things that they may not share in common, it's going to help a whole lot. And I think it's going to leave a lasting imprint on their lives that they'll have an opportunity to reflect back on.
Great. Well, it's going to be, really a privilege for me to take y'all home with me and to hang with y'all in my hood, south of Joburg. So looking forward to that. Emron, you going with us?
Yeah.
What are some of the expectations that you have, and what are you looking forward to?
Whenever I think about the trip, I just have good feelings, like good vibrations, is because I'm a black man who grew up in America, and I've always known Africa, that's the homeland, that's the motherland. And so just with that being said, I expect nothing but love, nothing but, a lot of learning too. At first I thought it was going to be, just like a cool little trip. I didn't think we were going to be talking to world leaders and things like that. And so when I was told that, I knew I was going to walk away with something, that's going to, really hit me in my mind and my heart. And so I can't wait, to be honest. I can't wait for it. I feel like it'll really impact how I, just how I look at things, how I look at people, how I look at certain situations, you know, like being homeless. I think it'll also like provide me with a solution in a way, just because I know like whenever black people from Africa they come to the U.S., they don't get stuck. Like they really like they find their niche and go for it, and they become successful, you know. And I feel like, you know, just seeing that that'll help me as well, like have that more of like a focused mindset, you know, to actually achieve what it is I want to, and also like find my purpose, you know, on this earth as well.
Great. Well, I mean, you're in for a treat, and I know, you know, you and your peers, you know, are gonna, you know, not just learn a lot, but also contribute a lot, you know, to the young people you're going to be connecting with,
Right.
you know, both in, you know, Johannesburg and Cape Town, and in Victoria Falls in Zimbabwe, you know, because part of our experience, you know, is to see how we can connect, you know,
Right.
our young people, invite them into the intersection around, you know, what they're going through, both opportunities and challenges, but most of all to see how they can form the necessary partnerships and relationships, you know, to facilitate, you know, solutions.
Right.
Because, you know, we believe in you guys around the fact that you are leaders and you can make a difference, and you have the solutions, you know, and so we're looking forward to learning from, you know, you guys, you know, as part of the experience.
Definitely.
I know that, you know, you're going to be one of our leaders.
He kept telling me, Miss Kelly, anything you want me to do. I want to go.
So Maisa, you what are you looking forward to? And
It's just so many things. It's not even enough time, brother, to be honest with you. But I believe Afrofuturism. I believe in that. You know, so it's like I know everybody has their different origins, because there were plenty of black people here before, you know, slaves. Plenty. So like sometimes like it's a discrepancy there. But for myself, like a spiritual decompression, going and kind of just like breathing, and any and everything that like South Africa, everything has to offer, like I'm just completely, I embrace it. And like I create superheroes. I could talk all day, but like I just can't wait. I like, go and breathe. And just like I'm for the air. I want seafood. Like man, I just get going down.
we have to hold this brother back.
Oh my God.
My goodness.
Oh my God.
We're going to have a great time. And again, as I mentioned, it's a privilege for me to curate and facilitate these experiences. And just briefly, our itinerary will be, we will be, you know, in Johannesburg for about 3 days. We will be in Cape Town for about 4 days. And then we'll be in Zimbabwe at Victoria Falls for about 3 days. And this is about cultural enrichment. It's going to be about leadership development. It's going to be about, you know, empowerment, providing enlightenment for our young people. And so, you know, I've curated the itinerary in such a way that every stop we're going to make, we're going to be focusing on certain leaders, you know, who have contributed, you know, to the liberation and the freedom of South Africa, and then to talk about, you know, how does that connect with, you know, leaders in the United States that facilitated, you know, the freedom and liberation, you know, of black people here in the United States. So for instance, you know, we're going to be landing in Johannesburg at the Oliver Tambo airport, and so, you know, the young people will learn about Oliver Tambo as, you know, one of the leaders of the African National Congress, you know, just the essentials around his leadership, what type of a leader, you know, he was. And then we'll be in Soweto and talk about what happened in 1976, you know, around the, you know, the uprising, you know, of young people there, and kind of connect that with, you know, what happened, you know, here in Watts as well as in Los Angeles around the riots, the uprising, the unrest. You know, people have different names for it. When we are at the Mandela House, you know, the museum there, in Soweto. We're going to be looking at the leadership of Winnie Mandela, because we're going to touch on, Nelson Mandela throughout our time together. In Cape Town, we're going to be visiting Robben Island, where, Nelson Mandela and several other, people, they've been in prison there. So, we're going to be talking about, that and the leadership, around there. We're going to be visiting several townships, looking at the leadership of Solomon Kalushi Mashlangu. So it's going to be just exciting for us, to connect all of these, leadership, opportunities, again, as part of, just expanding, the opportunity for young people, so they can realize that if you're going to be an effective leader in this day and age, it is critical for you, to have a transnational perspective and a global perspective, because we all part of this, of this world house, and we also want to invite, those who want to participate and support, this experience. I'm going to ask Janet to just tell us a little bit about how you can do that, because, we are, in the mode of fund development, and we want to give you the opportunity to come with us, to South Africa by investing in making it possible for our young people to get there. Janet, you want to say a little bit about how folk can participate?
Oh, absolutely. So thank you again for allowing us to have this platform, to have this discussion. When I tell you that everyone is excited, I'm telling you, some people were actually doing cartwheels at Sanctuary of Hope because they are so excited. Literally, really did a cartwheel.
Clap my hands real loud. That's
about this trip, because this is really going to be a monumental moment for them. And yes, we are in the fund development mode. We are raising funds because we want this trip to be as comfortable as possible for everyone who's participating on it. So if you, and I'm not saying if you, I hope that you will invest in the trip, because one, it's not only needed, but it's really going to be impactful for our young people. And one of the ways that you could do that is by visiting our website. And you can go to our website at www.thethesoh.org. And I'm quite sure if you Google us Sanctuary of Hope Los Angeles, you'll be able to connect with us. So if you click on any of our donation links, there will be an option for you there to donate towards our Africa trip.
So, looking forward to it. It's going to be a great experience. And as we continue to work with all of our hosts, it's going to be just, it's awesome. And I'm looking forward to continuing to prepare our young people, as we cross the pond. And going from South LA to Southern Africa. I want to thank our guest today from Sanctuary of Hope. So thank you, Janet.
Oh, thank you for having us.
Amran.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you, Myson.
My son.
My son. It's my accent. Thank you, my son, for being with us. Again, Sanctuary of Hope doing extraordinary work here in Los Angeles, and I tell you, the work that they are doing just reminds me around the fact that South LA is a place of beauty. It's a place of possibility, and it is a place where our young people are not at risk. They are at promise. And so thank you for joining us. This has been Faith Without Borders. I'm your host, Pastor Kelvin Sauls. We'll see you next time, and let me remind you, check out that website at www.thesoh.org and partner with us to continue to make a difference in the lives of our young people right here in South Los Angeles. Take care and keep the faith.